Not many people say, oh, the animal has a soul and things like that. And whenever we actually start talking about where our food comes from at a dinner table, it usually makes people very uncomfortable.
Right.
And people will say things like, can you please stop? It's making me uncomfortable. I want to ignore where my food came from so I can engage in this activity. When, if you ever look at the root word of ignorance, is ignore. And nothing in our life do we ever want to put ourselves in a darker place. We want to elevate our consciousness.
Hey, welcome to the Get Loved Up podcast. I'm Koya Webb, and here today I have Tamal and Victoria. They are two amazing spiritual leaders. They have a yoga studio together. They just came out with the Yoga Plate, their amazing book, and they are just a wealth of knowledge when it comes to spirituality, yoga, and relationship, which we're going to get all into. So, Victoria, Tamal, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
I don't even know where to start. You guys are beaming from ear to ear. You're so happy every time I see you. It can't always be like this.
You're always happy when I see you.
Well, it's definitely not always like this for me. Like sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, it's not always like this for us. We also have a 10-year-old son that lives with us, and things can be challenging. He happens to be our son.
Well, you can kick him out, right? At like 9 these days, like 8.
I'm thinking 11.
Oh goodness! So 10 years old.
Yeah. So things can get challenging when you're raising children, and you have multiple businesses on East and West Coast. We have a yoga studio here in Los Angeles and one in North Carolina, and now we have this new book, the Yoga Plate, that's out, and there's a lot of hats to be worn in our house. So learning how to navigate all of our businesses and all the dynamics in our household can also be challenging.
Right.
But I think the core value of everything that we're always trying to keep at the center of our relationship, not just in our husband and wife relationship, but as a unit, as a family with our son, is to make sure that we're always looking at the big picture of life and making sure that we have a strong spiritual practice.
Right.
And
Well, how did you guys meet? How did this bond become? Because you guys have a unique story. It
Well,
wasn't just like a dating app.
I still am a photographer, but I don't do it as a profession anymore. But I was doing a photo shoot for a jewelry company called Energy Muse. I don't know if you've heard of them. All the crystals. Yeah.
Yes.
So they hired a bunch of yoga teachers as the models, and he was one of them. And so it was a 2-day shoot. It was on this giant property. Anyway, we met that day, and most yoga teachers are very uncomfortable in front of the camera. And I had to do like up close because it was jewelry. And so they were super uncomfortable, but he loves to be on camera. And so I made them bring him back the next day.
Wow, she knew how to snag her a model, huh?
He brought his guitar, he was playing, he was chanting, kirtan. Like, I didn't even know, at the time what he was doing, but now I do. Anyway, 3 months later, maybe, we ran into each other at the yoga studio and then just started hanging out. And I mean, there is a big age difference between us, so I was like, what could I possibly have in common with him?
What's big for you?
oh, we're like 15 years apart.
15.
Yeah.
That's the key to a relationship. You just got to snag a young one. And
Hey, okay. I'm taking notes over here, taking notes.
Oh my gosh, I know. Some people, some of my friends were a little confused, but most of them, I mean, everyone loves him. Introducing him to my family was interesting because at the time he had long hair.
Right.
I'm like 21,
much longer,
22 years
much
old.
younger than me. Yoga teacher, vegetarian. I wasn't a vegetarian when he met me. Mm-hmm. And like my dad's like a deer hunter and like, just Midwest, grew up with just meat and potatoes, right?
Right.
So I brought him home and I mean, within like minutes, he was like the star of the family.
But what were some of the first things? You said the friends were just like, did you get any comments or any,
Oh, 100%, yeah.
Because I know a lot of people out there, it happens, like, love is love. And so I want you to really share how you kind of like overcame some of those initial comments, like what were they and how did they make you feel? Because some people are in that now. They found someone they love, but it's not approved of by their friends or their family, and it can be really hard.
Yeah, I mean, I am kind of a strong person, so some people kind of just fell away in my life. And then, I mean, most people embraced it after they had met him.
They fell away just because you were dating a younger guy?
A little bit. I mean, little bits.
Yeah, I mean, not
distancing.
like... Yeah.
Distancing, yeah, like they didn't get it. It makes people feel self-conscious, too.
And uncomfortable.
Yeah. Especially when people like to
it was
hang
the
out with their
reverse,
peers.
because I was the older one, and he was, if the guy is the older one, then who cares?
Right.
It doesn't...
So it's like a
I mean, our
double
society,
standard.
yeah. But, I mean, honestly, our relationship is so God-centered, and, I mean, he just opened up what I had been searching for, and, like, took me on a path that I had been looking for, just how to just relink your relationship with God and grow closer to God, and and so just, and part of that was becoming, like, the yoga lifestyle part of it is ahimsa and doing the least amount of harm possible. So I became a vegetarian fairly quickly. It was kind of a deal breaker for him.
If you weren't
Not kind of. It was a deal breaker.
Oh.
It was a deal breaker.
So you had her switch it over in 1 month.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, when it came down to it, at the time, this was 13 years ago, there wasn't Cafe Gratitude here in Los Angeles. There wasn't all these other restaurants. There was like Real Food Daily in Santa Monica, which isn't even there anymore. So I would take her there for every dinner date, and she was like, gosh, why we always go to the same spot? Until one day we're waiting for a table, and she said, hey, is it ever going to be okay with you if I still eat like fish and eggs? And I was like, oh no, here we go. And I'm like, actually it won't be. It kind of means a lot to me. And I explained to her that, in yoga they say all creatures of the earth, there's a soul that inhabits it, that gives it life. And we don't want to do anything that diminishes their well-being, also whatever may stunt their spiritual progress. And I gave her all these different philosophical reasons that are instated in the yoga system of why we don't, eat animals and what ahimsa meant. And it was like kind of heavy, like a bomb dropped. And then right as I was telling her this, they told her, oh, your table's ready. So we go up and we kind of have this very awkward dinner together. And then the next thing I know, she has to go see her family in Key West, which she does every single year. And so we left on this weird note. She went to Key West, and her dad and Victoria, they always have this ritual, kind of father-daughter date, where they go out and eat grouper together.
Right.
So my mom doesn't like fish, so we would just go to lunch by ourselves. And
so he
it was
told her.
a sweet little like bonding thing.
You can tell.
Okay, and so we went to lunch or dinner, whatever it was, and we ordered grouper, and mine came and it was like off, and I was like, an off fish is like, ew. It already, it just was like fishy, and I don't know, it was bad. So I got something else, and I was like, and then we went to lunch one more time later in the week, and the same thing happened, and I was like, okay, get it.
Wow.
And so I came back, and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and and Savannah, I have a daughter also, 23. We have a daughter together, so she took to it like super easily and quickly. And when I look back on her little 10 years at the time, she really always was pushing the meat away.
Wow.
And
at 10 years old.
Oh yeah, younger. Yeah, like she was not into eating the animals. She was just loved animals, and she was, so compassionate about them. But I just was doing what I was brought up doing.
Right.
I was just repeating what
That's all
my
you knew.
parents, and I've never had it presented to me before, and I just never, which I think is most people's situation.
Right. So can you share with us some of the philosophy, ahimsa, non-harming? I know that being one that you shared with Victoria on that first day. But.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, something you just said a second ago is so pertinent to the whole concept of the philosophical reasons of why we don't, partake in eating animals. One is you're saying, not many people say, oh, the animal has a soul and things like that. And whenever we actually start talking about where our food comes from at a dinner table, it usually makes people very uncomfortable.
Right.
And people will say things like, can you please stop? It's making me uncomfortable. I want to ignore where my food came from so I can engage in this activity. When, if you ever look at the root word of ignorance, is ignore. And nothing in our life do we ever want to put ourselves in a darker place. We want to elevate our consciousness.
Right.
So being able to eat our food without having this overshadowed darkness, or like, oh, I don't want to know really where this comes from, takes a toll on our mental health and our physical health. So that's one of the reasons. But in yoga, they say ahimsa means creating the least amount of harm as possible. Yoga system, there's a lot of real aspects to it. They know that this world, there's no way you cannot create no harm. It's impossible. Right. You can walk across a field, you'll step on ants. If you ever look at your skin under a microscope when you are in a lab, it looks like there's millions and millions of little microscopic alligators, and when you take a shower, it's like a genocide happening.
Right.
But ahimsa means creating the least amount of harm as possible. And how do we do that? And when you start to examine even the environmental reasons and things like that, of how deeply it affects the earth and people around us unconsciously. Like, I can't judge anybody for eating a meat-based diet. It's like, Victoria, you're raised this way, you're grown up this way. And our traditions kind of mold us into the person that we become later on, and it's not until new information is supplied that we may make changes or not make changes. So when it comes to the creating the least amount of harm as possible, a lot of people will say, Tamal, a minute ago you said all souls are in all living creatures, right? There's these souls inhabiting an animal, insect, a bacteria, human being, even plants. So people will say, how is taking the life of like a carrot different than taking the life of a cow? One for one. When in reality, it's not one for one. Ahimsa means creating the least amount of harm as possible. So let's say that you take the example of a cow. To make 1 pound of beef, it takes 20 pounds of grain.
Right.
It's every animal, every creature of this earth need to take some kind of nutrition, nourishment in to metabolize and make itself grow. So a cow needs to eat 20 pounds of grain. And we all cook, and I'm sure a lot of the listeners cook. If you ever make like rice or quinoa or anything, it doubles its size. So you take 1 cup of rice, it makes 2 cups of rice. So imagine how much grain how much food you can make out of 20 pounds of grain to feed people. You can feed a small village.
Right.
But there are steak houses in America where a 1 pound steak is a meal for one person. Right. Not to mention, to make 1 pound of beef, it takes 2,500 gallons of water. And we live in Los Angeles in California, where there's a drought. On the freeway it says, limit outdoor watering, severe drought. But we're one of the biggest dairy and cattle providers in the nation.
Right.
And to make a cow the right weight to be taken to the slaughterhouse, it has to weigh 1,000 pounds. So if you times 2,500 gallons of water times 1,000, it's 2,500,000 gallons of water for one cow.
Right.
That's enough water to float an entire Navy destroyer ship with all its crew and planes and everything on it. Then it's in the top 3 of the most polluting industries in the whole world, more than the trains, planes, and automobiles combined. It's the leading cause of deforestation. So it's not a matter of, oh, it's just 1 carrot or 1 cow. It's like, well, if you look at it, if I eat the cow, it creates so much harm environmentally, so much harm when it comes to our natural resources of water, so much harm when it comes to polluting this atmosphere. Not to mention the exchange rate is really bad. 20 pounds of grain for 1 pound of food, that'd be like me giving Koya $100 and asking for $1 back. It just doesn't work.
Absolutely.
It's a terrible exchange rate. When we go to another country, we're always like, what's the exchange rate? I want the best exchange rate. Well, we should do that with our food as well.
Absolutely.
So we start to realize, what is the least amount of harm possible? And we realize that it's what we put in our mouths. Because most of us don't go through our life trying to hurt other people, and we have good intentions. So yoga asks us to look at, what are the places that I'm not examining where I may be causing some harm in this world, and take it a step further. And that's why today, there's 1 billion people living in India, and the most part of them were vegetarians.
Right.
Because of this pillar of ahimsa.
Thank you so much. I love, and I had to have you go back and break that down because I was just at this event called the March of Silence, and I said the same thing because they're like, plants don't have feelings. I was like, actually they do, because I'm a plant mom, and when I go away from home, I have a sensitive plant, like both of my peace lilies, and one name is Rachel and the other is Rebecca, and Rebecca just fainted, like completely fell out. Rachel was fine, and when I came home and did Reiki on her and sang to her and watered her, she perked back up within one day. And I even grew up with plants, and so you feel the plants. And my mom used to have us singing to the plants when I was young because I was a country girl. And so I knew that was not the truth. Like, plants have feeling, but like you said, it's the least amount of heart. And that's also why I, like you all, am non-judgmental.
Yes.
Where everyone is in their journey. And I think that is so important for other plant-based people and vegans to hear.
Absolutely.
Because it is not a fight. It is an awareness and an inspiration and a light that we are by causing less harm, because we might be causing less harm on our plate, but we might be causing harm in another part of our life. So we can never judge or point the finger.
Absolutely.
So thank you for breaking that down for me. I think it's not done enough, and I think especially from someone who has been vegan for how many years now?
I've actually never eaten meat, fish, or eggs in my life.
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, because I grew up in a yoga ashram, so.
That's right. That's right. Oh my goodness! And how old are you?
I'm 34.
34 years. So entire life. I can't imagine that because that's not my story.
That's our son now.
That's amazing.
Yeah, people are like, how are you alive? I'm like, I feel great.
Right, you feel great, you look great.
Yeah.
So let's unpack that a little bit. How has it been? Because, I mean, now you're in North Carolina, but from the ashram to LA, can you take us a little bit through your journey and how you've had to deal with having your spirituality, which is very different? Because some people, they might feel this is the right thing to do, but oh my God, it's so different and it causes so much separation and with the family and with society. How have you been able to navigate that?
Well, first I want to say that to this day we have so many family and so many friends that don't eat a plant-based diet. And I love them as equally as the people that eat a plant-based diet.
Thank you for
including
saying
all
that.
of her family members and some of my family members. And when it comes down to it, this book isn't about, let's force everybody to be vegan or anything like this. Let's adopt more plant foods into our body, even if you're not 100% all the way there. Even if you're only like, I'm only eating 60% plant-based, 40% not. Any little jump, any little experimenting in that direction helps.
Right.
When you're talking about, this relationship with myself and Victoria and how there's an age difference, age has never really meant much to me because of how I was brought up in a yoga ashram. As early as I can possibly remember, my father was bestowing upon me ancient wisdom, and he was a deeply spiritual person. And he taught me at the very core of everything that aham brahmasmi, I am a spirit, I'm a soul. I'm not this temporary material body.
Right.
So she's not her temporary material body, even if there's an age difference. I'm not half Japanese, half white. I'm just playing this role in this life right now.
Right.
Her body isn't white eternally. That's just the body the soul is wearing this life. Your body's black, but it's not eternally black. In yoga, they say aham brahmasmi. We're all equal. We're all individual souls that are inhabiting these temporary pairs of clothes. It's like changing clothes from life to life. So it was so enriching and so empowering at a young age that it took away so much of the fear and anxiety that I felt so many other people experience. Took away the fear of even dying, because so much of us are afraid of death because we feel like this is us.
Right.
This shell I'm wearing is all I have, and I'm a material body and I must get material things, and if I lose those material things, it's material body, it's all over and the world's going to end, it's terrible. Right? But if you realize, wait a minute, everything in life is a rental, something we have for a short period of time, from the car I drive to the house I live in to the body I'm wearing, and that I am actually a soul that is just temporarily encased in matter, and if I use everything in service to help other people in service to God, then my life will be well lived. Right. So I said this recently to some friends, that when I was a kid, my father used to tell me, whatever you do in life, just remember, if you don't share what you've learned here in this ashram, you're a thief. So I grew up with this thing of, gosh, I really have to share this. I really have to go out there and give people this comfort, this solace of knowing they're not their body. Death isn't the end. how to live a life that is going to fulfill them, how to inspire people to do good, and how to take this world from a negative and dark place to a beautiful, positive place. So growing up as a kid in ashram, it was a donation-based one. It was wherever we lived. It was in Los Angeles at times because my father was like a B-list movie star. That's how he supported us. He was the star of General Hospital, and he was in Miami Vice and all these 80s shows.
Right, that's where I grew up. I'm an 80s baby.
Me too.
I watched all of that.
The best.
Yeah.
And he was on Magnum PI, like every like major 80s show he was on it, and you know, it was his passion to just help people. So he'd have these, he would run a house would be where myself and my 6 siblings, my mom and dad would live, and then we'd have a garage and a guest house that we'd clear out and gut out and put beds like a dorm, and people from all over the world would live with us. We'd have people from Australia, from Asia, from India, from Europe, just filling into our house. We'd have 20, 30 people live with us at a time. And it was donation. They didn't have to pay a dime if they didn't want to. Hence the reason my dad got really broke at times, and we had to close it down, and he had to go do acting jobs and get eviction notices and all these things that were ups and downs. But he had this strong shraddha, this faith, that as long as he was doing what he was supposed to do, everything would always work out, and it always did. And it was just such an act of selfless love. We'd wake up in the morning, you know, some of us would do yoga postures. My mom was really into yoga, physical yoga stuff, her and her friends. And that was before yoga mats, before Lululemon. She was wearing like the Jane Fonda leotards and Indian blankets out on the ground that now we use for props.
Right.
And headbands and stuff that are now coming back in.
I know, it's recycling.
It's always recycling. They'd be doing that stuff. I got into really physical yoga stuff at a very young age. We have like hilarious photos when I'm like 4. You know, putting my legs behind my head and doing different yoga postures. But the main emphasis of what was going on in the ashram wasn't the physical stuff. The main part about it was all the philosophical. And that's what this book, The Yoga Plate, has. We go through who Patanjali was, which most people actually have no idea. He's like the father of yoga, and he has these 8 writings called Patanjali's 8 Sutras, and only one of them is physical postures. The rest is how to live a spiritual life.
Right.
So my father was doing that part, how to live a spiritual life. So we'd have philosophy talks, meditation, kirtans. He was so serious about giving people experiential knowledge. And what that means is most people, he would say, are armchair philosophers. We sit around in our armchair, we're like, oh yeah, I read this book by Nietzsche, I read this thing, or the Tao, I read this thing, I read that thing. But he said very few people read what they see and then they apply it to their life. And he talked about the differences between intellectual understanding and experiential knowledge. Like, I give this example, if anybody's ever tried to surf before, you could read for 20 years on books on how to surf, and at the end of 20 years, if I give you a 5'8" shortboard and you've read everything about how to do an air and a Gorkin flip and a cutback, and I give you that surfboard and you paddle out, most definitely you're not going to be able to surf.
Right.
Barely even set up.
Right, exactly.
Because you don't have the experiential knowledge yet.
Right.
So he at one time even had us all do, like, if anybody knows it, a kirtan, it's a chanting, but it's a call and response chanting. He had us do it for 24 hours because he wanted people to see what it really would do for you.
Right.
And what kind of knowledge you will get from that.
And I would love for you to kind of break down and unpack a little bit more of the sutras and the different limbs of yoga, because I do think most people today, which I'm grateful for, just like the food thing, I'm so grateful, where you get in for the handstand, or you get in for putting your leg back. No matter how you get into it, the journey, it's just like jumping in the water and getting on the surfboard.
You got it.
However you get into it. But will you break down the other limbs of yoga, the other sutras that we talk about? Because I think it's really important for people to hear, especially for someone as knowledgeable as you two.
So you know, in Patanjali's 8 Sutras, we could talk about them all day long. There are key ingredients that he sets up in the very beginning of it. There's the yamas and niyamas, and then there's other things that come after that. And the very first kind of set writings he has are things that you abstain from, or you start to discipline yourself with. And people are like, well, I don't want to be disciplined. Can I just do this thing or that thing? But anything in life that is really healthy for us usually is difficult, it's challenging, and it takes discipline.
Right.
For instance, we could just sit around, watch TV all day, and eat a ton of junk food. It's going to be easy, but it's not going to be good for us. We physically and mentally won't feel good. Or we'll go out, get a green juice, go to yoga class, and it'll be very challenging getting your body in these different positions. And in that moment of where things are causing you some discomfort and those mental challenges are arising, the end result is you feel incredible, you feel like you're happy, your endorphins are pumping, you feel like you want to be kind and generous to other people. So when we look at that everything in life that is really good for us usually is challenging, well, then there's a reason for him giving these things that we need to abstain from or detox from our life so that we can progress even on a spiritual level. So yeah, the first thing is ahimsa. Then he gets into other things where it's like satya, truthfulness, where it's being honest with ourselves and other people. Right. And that takes looking at yourself, my bad habits and things I need to change, but also being truthful when it's timely and ready.
Right.
I did a podcast last week, and somebody was saying, well, don't you think yoga should just be like accepting everybody for whatever they're doing at all times? And so that's actually not the case, because Gandhi lived and breathed yoga. He had an amazing understanding of the Bhagavad Gita and the pillars that are there, which is a yoga writing, a yoga scripture. And if he just accepted everybody for whatever they're doing, he never would have told the English government that they were treating the Indians wrongly and that they needed to liberate this country and kick them out of the country.
Right.
Nor would Martin Luther King, do this whole revival in the United States where, hey, treating African Americans is wrong, segregation is wrong. Satya really means telling people things, the truth, when it's timely and it's ready. Doesn't mean it's going to be always the most digestible and loving and most, I really want to hear it, but if it's important, it needs to be spoken.
Right.
So being truthful yourself and others.
Speaking of truthfulness, Victoria, what do you think? How do you feel that has come to play in your life? What are some areas where you've been challenged about, like, where you feel like, I don't really want to say this, but I have to?
Well, I thought it was always like a, what's the word? Like a negative thing about myself, but because I'm a very direct person. But then I asked our spiritual teacher, I'm like, am I too direct?
Right.
Because, I mean, there's a fine line, where you're not rude to somebody or whatever, but you have to, like, speaking your truth is not like walking around a bush and, making a little dance out of it and not really saying what you really want to say.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Right, but what's the balance between being just like straight in your face and, okay, look, tactfully, letting someone know, like, what you did really hurt me. What you did really offended me. Because I think especially people listening, they're into holistic health, and wealth, and spirituality. But sometimes it's hard to tell a loved one or a partner, like, how you really feel when you know it's going to hurt their feelings.
She doesn't have a problem telling me.
He's actually helped me. He's really graceful with people when, there's situations that come up where we either have to let, like, an employee go or uncomfortable situations. So I've learned a lot by watching him.
Right.
I may not be as graceful as he is, but I'm definitely trying and learning, and everything. We're all on our own journeys, and
absolutely,
and trying to become our best versions of ourselves day by day. So
can you share a story where you're kind of like, all right, that wasn't nice, but kind of flipped it around? Or many of those? I know I'm digging deep here, but
what day was that? Oh.
I mean, one that you really feel like, I really learned a lesson from, that really hit home for me.
I can't think of like a specific one.
Right.
But just because we work together, there, becomes friction just on the having to get things done, the reality of, the to-do list, and like with the book publisher and having to turn in things on a certain date. And so I have less patience. And also it takes me a minute if we do get in like a little bit of a heated moment. It takes me a minute to calm down. But we actually have gotten so much better at just don't you think?
What?
So no, I mean, I think
No,
this
we have
is
gotten
important.
gotten better.
No, I think it's really important. And there's something that
talking through things.
Yeah, and there's something that my father shared with me when I was a kid, and
Sorry.
Yeah, it's something that was very important because my father, was very, very graceful in the way he dealt with his relationships in general, as well with his children. My father was raised in a very abusive upbringing, physically, and verbally, and everything. So when it came time for him to have children, he said you could either do two things. You could repeat the way you were raised, or you can do the exact opposite. And so he just chose to love bomb everybody. And he told me that to make his marriage work, and to make any romantic relationship work, he said, someone always has to take the humble position at some point and apologize. You can't just leave it where you're both like, and then just try to just like bury whatever happened and keep going. Somebody has to come and say, you know what, I'm wrong, I'm sorry. Even if you weren't wrong, he's like, just go in there and apologize. And the other person will recognize that, and you will both start adopting it. And soon enough, you're going to try to beat each other to the chase of apologizing.
Right.
And so that's something we've adopted in our relationship.
Yeah.
In yoga, they actually have stages to a relationship. Did you know that are written down?
Well, why don't you share those stages to a relationship?
Let's do it. Let's get into it.
Let's get into it.
So the first stage.
Romantic stage.
Yeah,
The romantic yogi.
No,
Next book. There you go.
Yeah, the first stage is infatuation.
Okay.
And
everyone gets that one.
yeah, it's when you meet them and you're like, oh my God,
Everyone
you're
wants
beautiful.
that one to last.
Yeah, I love you. You're the most amazing romantic thing. And oh, you're amazing. Just
Like
nothing
an
wrong.
illusion.
We'll never fight. We'll never fight.
Right.
They say that stuff, and that can last either days.
We didn't fight for a
weeks,
long time. I was
months,
wondering if we were ever going to fight.
or years.
Year? It took a year for the first fight?
At least.
Yeah, at least.
Wow,
At
that's
least.
amazing.
Yeah.
At least.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Probably after Kanai was born. Sleep deprivation.
We'll blame it on the 10-year-old that lives with us.
The 10-year-old.
I don't know where that guy is, what he's doing right now.
We're definitely going to get to parenting,
Yeah.
but we'll be on the relationship. So relationship steps.
Yeah, so there's infatuation. It can last days, weeks, months, years, where people are just in this deep romantic thing. That's where there's got the Snooky Poo names and all that stuff's going on.
We have them.
Yeah. And then after that becomes the most challenging. That's tolerance. That's when, you go, yeah, we're actually going to fight. You know what? Can you take out the trash every now and then? Flush the toilet. Can you put the toilet seat down? And all these things start to bother and just, people. And that's where usually relationships fall apart. That's where breakups happen, divorce happens. But they say the only way you can actually get to the third stage, the final stage, is to make sure that you have strong spiritual values, that God is at the center of your life, and that you realize you're both spirits, both souls inhabiting these different bodies, and that you're loving, respecting the soul that is in that body, and you're trying to help them grow spiritually, not just materially. Right. And if you have that at your core, you can get through, obviously, infatuation, but then weather tolerance and get to the third and final stage, which is true friendship.
That's
and
beautiful.
it's something nothing breaks.
So yeah, we can diffuse things pretty quickly when we go back to that.
And what does tolerance look like?
Tolerance is anything from irritation and nagging to deep-seated things that you're holding against somebody, and you haven't brought it to the surface and talked about it and gone through it. People hold on to a lot of baggage and luggage, and they just bury it down deep inside, and they never bring it about. And a lot of it, the things that bother us are our own perception of it. It may not even be something that person is even doing. It's what you think that person is doing. I talked about this the other day with some friends, that there's this Greek philosopher, his name is Epictetus, and he said it's not the events that are traumatizing to us in our life, it's our opinion about those events that traumatize us in our life.
Absolutely.
So you could be thinking, for instance, we could walk down the street and we could see somebody and you say hi to them and they have a frown on their face, and all day you're like, that person's rude, that person didn't smile, they were frowning, I said hi, they didn't even say hi back. But what if they actually didn't hear you?
Right.
What if that they just found out their mother died?
Absolutely.
We have no idea. It's our perception of it. So even in our relationships, we can't just always dump what we think is going on with somebody else. We have to talk about it, work through it, and bring about the truth.
That's so true. I mean, we need to really, I think that's the most important thing, that it happens in relationship. But I think some people, think tolerance is putting up with.
Yeah.
Well, okay, well, this person is this way. That's just how they are. Okay, fine. But what I'm kind of hearing is like tolerance. There's a tolerance, and then in sticking with a person and communicating and working things out. And I think that's the important part that I kind of want to talk about is just what does that look like to say, okay, this person's made me upset. This person is irritating me and I'm frustrated. I have this baby because you have 2 children now,
Yeah.
and that's a lot. So what are the things that you've done, Victoria, to help you really get through that phase of communicating, some tolerance, which you're saying in a relationship, you're in a relationship, so that's to me what tolerance is. But in order to stay there, you have to communicate. So what does that communication look like? Do you need like some time away and to come back? Do you like to address it right then?
My process is I kind of shut down and get quiet and don't say anything. And I kind of stew in my anger or whatever, frustration. But then, I mean, he's actually helped me become a way better communicator. I still don't think I'm that great of a communicator all the time. But yeah, I need to like just diffuse, and then we talk about it. And that's why I've learned to say I'm sorry like quicker than I probably like in the past like wouldn't even do. Like I'd be like, I'm right, you know, like.
And then the sorry comes a day later or like a month later?
No, we don't ever really go to bed angry at each other.
That's beautiful.
No.
Yeah. You can't. How are you going to sleep?
You can't sleep.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, you can't sleep.
Right.
You could try, but
That's
you're
so
gonna
important.
you're gonna ruin your whole next day then.
Right. I love couples that have that, like, let's not go to sleep angry. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. I think that's really beautiful. Okay, so communication is how you stay tolerant, not just accepting what anyone's dishing you, but, you know, really unpacking it, communicating, understanding where the other person is coming from is what I'm hearing. And then so the third step
is true friendship.
True
Because
friendship.
most people don't make it out of being tolerant. They just become they can't tolerate it anymore.
Right.
So
it's like divorce.
Yeah, divorce,
Or
breakup,
breakup.
done, boom, drop the
Yeah.
mic.
Next. Yeah.
You know, which sometimes happens, and sometimes people are just not compatible. I completely understand that. When people are just not compatible and they're not meant to be with each other, that does happen. But yeah, if you have spiritual life at the core of everything, because what happens is if your whole relationship is just based upon the way each other physically look, what if the person you're with not only gets older, but what if they have some catastrophic accident and their whole body and their features and everything that you were so focused on, this is what I love, is just their physical body, and it's all changed. You see people do this all the time. You read it on the news. Somebody, you know, got paralyzed from the neck down, and halfway through the hospital, the person divorced that person, and you're like, what?
Oh my goodness.
What is going on?
I haven't heard that, but I wouldn't want to.
Yeah, so
sad.
you need to be someone that loves whoever you're with on the deepest level. I love this soul. I love this person so much. I'm going to be by their side till their last breath. So if you have that at the core, it can change everything. There's an incredible book out there called Small is Beautiful by E.F. Schumacher. And he's an English economist, and he was supposed to be sent to this small town in Asia, and he was supposed to go there to make these people civilized and everything.
Right.
So he went there, and the whole town is built in a big circle. At the center of the town is a temple, and they live very simply. He lived there for a while, and he came back to England, and everyone's like, did you make like those savages, you know, civilized and everything? He said, I didn't change a thing, they changed me.
Wow.
He said, because I realized they had everything. They were living simply, they didn't have the material wealth, anything, but God was at the center, and that made everything so beautiful and them so happy and so fulfilled. And that's how a relationship should be. This is a small village. My wife, my son, it's a small little village. We have to make God at the center, and then everything will be beautiful, either whether we're rich or poor.
Absolutely. That's so beautiful. I went to Nairobi earlier this year, and all these beautiful children, we brought the water, clean water to them. But the thing I realized, like, we're bringing the water, and that's great, and that's a beautiful service, but these children are already happy.
Yeah.
Some with very little clothes, some with no shoes, but they were singing and playing and running and doing yoga with me. And the spiritual energy that I felt was amazing, magnetic. I'm feeling it now, just talking about it, reliving that experience on a cellular level. It was something that you can't even describe. And when someone is happy with the least, that type of happiness transcends, you know, a person that's happy. You can tell if the timing's off or if a hair is out of place, then they're unhappy. Like, you can feel that.
Yeah.
You can feel the energy, or, oh, my makeup's off, so now I'm unhappy, or, you know, and that type of energy where you go into a village, like you said, and you see maybe things are not as used to, maybe not as put together, and someone might seem completely different, but you feel the happiness that courses through every cell of your body. And I feel like that is just like one of the most priceless things in the world, is true happiness, true joy, and you can feel it on an energetic level.
It's so educational when you come to those experiences. We were in Fiji on this remote island, and we went to this, we had to take a boat to get to the school. The kids don't have a bus or anything, you get a boat to it. We went there, there's no electricity. There's first grade through high school in one room. And we walk in there, and these kids are all barefoot, torn up clothes and everything. They're all in there, but they are so happy.
Absolutely.
And they all love each other so much. They're all
The
classmates. It's
bonding.
like 40 kids and crammed in this little metal container. Yeah, it's something that is so educational that we should really go out to seek experiences like that to give us a news flash and an awakening.
Right. It's a new perspective. And from then on, it's like, if everything, like if for some reason I'm in that position, I know, like, I'll just remember the happiness. And coming from a small town, you realize that, okay, yeah, you know, you all have traveled from LA to North Carolina and things like that, but you're still happy no matter where you go. And I think that's what we kind of want to talk more about, is just how has it been going traveling, you know, because you've been here for a while, and so, and you've been in different realities, from the South to the West to, can you take me a little bit of the challenges that you've had with that journey?
We chose that journey.
Right.
To go have a simpler life. We moved out of Los Angeles to...
And how long were you here?
Since 1989.
Wow.
A long time.
Wow.
That was, yes.
Yeah, a long time.
You were
And I've been here back and forth a long time as well. I think one of the challenges for us right now is that I have to come to Los Angeles so
to
much
travel.
To teach.
So like, I've been here, by the end of this year, I've been here almost 4 months out of the year, 3.5 months of the whole year away from my wife and
It's the
son.
longest we've ever had
Apart.
yeah. So,
Yeah, and it kind of takes a toll on, you know, my son's always like, oh, Dad's got to leave again. Oh my gosh, because he's my little buddy.
Right.
He's a basketball machine, and he loves to play basketball day with me and go to the beach. So that's probably the biggest challenge of all of it, is juggling the family dynamic of having to go away so much.
Right.
You know, and right now it has to be that way, but it won't permanently be that way.
Absolutely.
But going back and forth from coast to coast, I mean, yeah, culturally there's big differences. You know, you come to Los Angeles, and our friend the other day said, yeah, you like bonk your head on a vegan restaurant every other day. You're like, oh, I got my hair stuck in your vegan restaurant. There's so much plant-based food in the town we're living in. There is no vegan
Nothing.
restaurant.
Zero.
So
There's
health food
stores.
stores.
No wonder you wrote a book.
Yeah.
You're like, we need something to eat. Everyone start eating so we can open some
I started
restaurants
Yeah.
here.
teaching cooking classes there
Right.
too. So.
Oh, good. That's amazing.
And they love it. Yeah.
And then there's a humongous plant-based community there.
Oh,
There's
huge.
literally thousands and thousands of like vegans in Wilmington, the town we live in, but just no one's in
And
a
in North Carolina.
plant-based restaurant. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it could be challenging to open
yeah.
up the brick and mortar in this day and age. I feel like a lot of people are doing like meetups and together and getting food delivered.
And that's what they're doing
things
there.
Like that.
Yeah,
Just
they
getting
do.
food
They
that
have a-
delivered.
They're doing
Meetups.
potlucks and
Yeah.
Meetups.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, there's this huge vegan
Vegan.
community, and they all get together. There's like 3,000 or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Are you guys gonna have your meetups there? Have you started?
She just
that?
did a cooking class the other day,
yeah.
or the other week.
Once this book launch gets rolling, then we can start doing, I want to do like a cooking class, like probably once a month, or like maybe start a cooking club, or, you know.
And what was the
Make
hardest
something
part
up.
about writing the book?
The writing.
Right.
I'm not a writer. To sort of write down the recipes and to find like a fun, you know, intro into them. I did all the photography, so that part was really fun. And doing the recipes was fun, you know, being in the kitchen and experimenting and twisting and stuff. But probably the actual having to sit down at the computer and like write out the intro.
Right.
Yeah, that was the most challenging part.
I think you know, for her it was probably the hardest part was the writing part, but she also had a company before this called Nourishment Now, and Nourishment Now had like so many recipes she had cataloged and all these interviews with like John Robbins and all these like really famous plant-based, you know, leaders.
Right.
And so when it came time to getting the recipes together, she already had recipe tested a lot of things, and I was like, for me the hardest part is I never write anything down. I'm like, let's throw it together kind of guy in the kitchen.
Right.
So she's like, Tamal, this is great. What did you put in it? I'm like, a deer in headlights. And then I have to go back, and then she's like having me measure everything, and then it doesn't taste the same. She's like, it doesn't taste the same. I have to go back and back and back, and then once I got it right, I'd be like, I don't even like it anymore. Let's do something new. And so she'd be like, why are you inventing new recipes? So like, I want to say 40% of my recipes were like brand new out of nowhere.
Wow.
They were.
I'm like, we're doing a Nutella raw vegan cheesecake. She's like, you don't even have a recipe for that. I'm like, we're going to figure it out.
That's amazing, because I feel the same way. Like, I just like going by feeling.
Yeah.
And when you go by feeling and you measure, it is different.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to explain it.
Totally different.
That's Tamal cooking.
It's my grandma. I'd make banana bread, and my grandma, I give her an exact recipe, and every time it tastes different. She literally watched me and wrote down, and she was like, I want you to scrape it off clean. I want you, if you put an extra thing of butter, she literally wrote down everything to the T that I put in, and she did it, and it still tastes different. And then it was kind of frustrating, because my grandma was like, just let Koya make the banana bread.
Just let her make it.
Yeah, but she actually taught me the recipe.
Oh my
And
gosh.
so we couldn't figure it out. We couldn't figure out why it was different. We couldn't figure out why it tasted different. But it just goes to show, like, sometimes when you don't measure, maybe I am putting a little bit more when I'm feeling excited,
right.
you know? And, but it's really hard when you come to measure
So
it.
hard.
So I think allowing people to follow the recipes, but then just add what you want, like feel it out, I think is like a good thing I like to tell people. But some people that aren't comfortable with that, like, I don't know if you like the measuring more, Victoria, but some people really want to get the exact measure.
Yeah.
I prefer measuring more, but then once I make a recipe 500 times, then I don't measure
just
it
don't.
anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
And
We
I'm
just
like,
dump it.
That's about a teaspoon. That's about, you know, I'm like, I can't be bothered with
Right. That's so
getting
good.
them out.
Well, you guys are so much fun, so much fun, and we know it's challenging. And so what relationship advice would you give? I heard the one tip, you know, don't go to bed without saying sorry, which is beautiful. And what are the tips you would give for longevity in relationships?
I mean, if you have God at the core of your relationship,
God at the core.
that's
Yeah, and then I think just
patience.
making sure you spend time together. It's so easy to get into the hustle and bustle of life, and things get very habitual, and we get into this pattern where all you're doing is working, waking, sleeping, working, waking, sleeping, and you don't spend time with your significant other. It's very important. And I don't mean just weekly. I mean, try to spend time every single day.
Right.
Don't go watch TV, go sit in bed, go to bed 20 minutes early and talk. Go for a
We do that a
walk
lot.
together after dinner if you're both working and things like that.
Right.
Because we get into this disconnect. When we're living in a house connected, but our minds and our hearts are disconnected, then things can go south. So.
Right. And so when you spend this time together, so you don't necessarily have date nights. It's more like quality time.
We do, but we also do things like, because we also have a very different circumstance than most people. It's not like we have a 9 to 5. We're constantly working at home, similar to like what you do. We're like work and do these things, but you know, you're holding yourself accountable of when you're clocking in and clocking out. So we'll be like, okay, it's noon. Let's go for a lunch break, walk on the beach together. So and then we could have a smoothie and we go walk on the beach and things like that.
Yeah.
So not everybody will be able to do that, but that's what we do.
We're together all day.
Yeah.
Right.
I suggest, but it's still not always quality because we'll be in different rooms.
Doing different things.
Different things.
Or, as you mentioned, minds in different places.
Yeah, so we
and I
need-
think that's an important for people that spend time together, because sometimes you'll find people that spend more time together have less quality time together.
Yes, totally.
Because just what you said, your mind's in different places. It's work, and it's like, well, we've been together all day, so you do your thing out with the girls, and I do my thing out with the boys, but they never had that quality time.
Some people have amazing relationships and they're gone 9-10 hours of the day because when the love's away, the love grows stronger sometimes for people.
Right.
Our favorite thing to do probably is like drop Kanai off at school and go to the beach.
You go for a walk.
And like, jump in the water. I mean, the beaches there are so beautiful.
That's
and
amazing.
you're like a little kid when you're in the water. It's so fun.
I love it. So time together. Don't go to bed without saying, I'm sorry.
God at the center.
And God at the center. I love that. I love those. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So you have this book here,
Yes,
the
the
Yoga
Yoga
Plate.
Plate.
I'm so excited about it. And it has beautiful pictures in here. And you guys have just done a lovely job with, the morning rituals. I think you have like bases, and it's really simple and easy. I feel like anyone can make these recipes. There's not a lot of ingredients in each recipe. So what do you think is your main goal? If everything went as you would want it to go with this book, what would that look like?
I would like to do another book right after this because we have so many ideas of follow-up things that we'd like to do that we feel would impact not just families but communities. And then, I eventually want to do another book that's less food-oriented, more lifestyle-oriented philosophically.
Okay, thank you. And you, Victoria?
I mean, I hoped that this book can help change, people just even in baby steps. And that's why we made the recipes super simple, so that it can be for, newbies, people who just want to like check it out, or, people who have been plant-based for a long time, many years. However, the ahimsa part in the beginning is just one of the Patanjali's 8 sutras, so there's 7 more. So there's definitely, this is the first.
Books to come.
Yes, exactly.
So good. And for both of you all, if you had one thing that you would tell, since 10 and 11 has been coming up for a very tender age in this conversation, what would you tell your 11-year-old self?
My 11-year-old self. I would probably tell her to just stay true to herself and, don't always go with like what society is doing. If your path is the road less traveled, it might be the better road, but just stay true to yourself and follow your heart.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
I would tell my 11-year-old self to soak in as much as you possibly can.
And it sounds like you have.
Yeah, hopefully.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. Well, let the listeners know where they can find you. We have your book, The Yoga Plates. Bring your practice into the kitchen with 108 simple and nourishing vegan recipes. I can't wait to try that out. And where else can everyone find you?
TheYogaPlate.com and yogasalt.com.
And also Instagram.
Instagram, The Yoga Plate. Yoga
My Instagram, Tamal
Tamal
Dodge.
Nice.
Check it out.
All right. Well, thank you guys so
Thank
much.
you.
And last thing, the question that I ask everyone is, how do you get loved up? Mentally, spiritually, and physically. Top way you get loved up mentally. We'll start with that one.
I'm really big into, I was reading this thing that people who are given an average of something like 10 hugs every day, their boosts in self-esteem, positivity, their blood pressure, all these amazing benefits happen just from hugs and things like that. And not just quick hugs, but I want like big hugs. So my whole thing is I try to go to Victoria and Kanai through the day, and I try to hug them like crazy and rub them on the chest and squeeze them as much as I can, because I want to charge them up to the point now where they'll yell. Even our son goes, "Dad, I need my love battery charged up."
I love battery charge.
I love that. So you're a love battery charger.
I like to play the love battery charger.
What
He's
about
a
you,
love
Victoria?
bomber for sure. I just think, how do I get loved up? Just really like probably looking somebody in the eye and smiling and having a connection.
I love it. Eye contact. Do you do eye gazing in your practice?
No.
It's so much fun. Every retreat, the eye gazing.
Yeah.
Because it does connect you and it brings you closer. I've had so many like life-changing things. These two ladies were eye gazing. They ended up spiritually connecting, having a connection with their fathers, having similar paths and relationships with their fathers, and then sharing with each other. And one of them had a healing experience with their father because of eye gazing. Started with just eye gazing. So yes, absolutely. And then I know you guys have a lot of different spiritual practice, but what do you think would be the number one spiritual practice that you teach your children and in your community?
Community, I would always just say, if you don't have a spiritual practice, the very baseline entry thing to do is svadhyaya, which is in Patanjali's 8 Sutras, which is introspection. Asking, who am I? Am I this body or am I a soul? I can't just take Tamal Dodge's word from it on this podcast.
Absolutely.
Is there a God or is there not a God? Why are the things the way they are? What is my purpose? Why do I exist? When we start to examine these deep metaphysical, ontological questions, it puts us on the path.
Absolutely. Self-assessment, I say every single day. Like every single day, I have to get up. And if I don't do it daily, I won't go a week without really checking in with myself.
Well, that's how I think my spiritual path started, was by journaling and looking at myself and writing all of my thoughts and feelings down. And then prayer.
Beautiful.
It's super powerful.
Prayer is super powerful. Do you have a favorite prayer, or you just
No, I just talk to God
whatever you have
all day long.
I know, all day long.
All day
That's
long.
the key.
Yeah.
All day long. That's when I knew that I went from just religion to spiritual practice, and that's how I explained it to my mother and my father. Growing up, going to church on Sunday, and then becoming more spiritual, because I was definitely religious growing up. Knew all the books of the Bible, followed the 10 Commandments as much as I could. But when I feel like I came more spiritual is when I started having a conversation with God every single day. I started praying every single day. Throughout the day, I'm having conversation and realizing it's an ongoing, all the time thing.
It's a dialogue.
It's the dialogue. So good, so good. And then physically, because we talked a lot about like a lot of spiritual and emotional, but do you have a daily physical practice that you do?
I practice yoga.
She does literally every day.
Yeah, pretty much every day.
Same for you, or?
No, I'm always in the back just smoking cigarettes.
Oh my God.
No, I just do a lot of active things. I do yoga, but I also do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I do that quite a bit. Actually, I'm a co-owner of a Jiu-Jitsu school out in Wilmington now.
It's amazing.
Yeah, so I do that probably 4 times a week, as well as I surf and I do yoga. Things that I would encourage people to do is just be active to some degree. It doesn't have to be yoga asanas. Go for a walk. You have to get outside. You got to move your body, even if it's 20, 30 minutes.
Right. And thanks for sharing that. And I'm glad I asked, because I think you're living, if you will, the yogi lifestyle, but it doesn't mean you have to necessarily do the asana every day. You can do it every day, but there are also other movements that you can incorporate. You can dance, you can do jiu-jitsu or surfing and different types of movements and still have that spiritual connection and that feeling and that moving the chi energy in your body, which I think is the most important.
Dance, surfing,
love
all of
dance.
it. Anything can be.
We have dance parties.
Anything can
Dance
be.
parties. I want to be invited.
Anything can be yoga, because again, in Patanjali's 8 Sutras, he has something called Ishvara Pranidhana, which means offer all of your life's actions to God. So I'll offer my dance. I'm going to offer my surfing. I'm going to offer this, and then all becomes yoga as long as all of your life's actions are offered.
I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Until next time, get loved up, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and take care of the planet. Peace. Oh, we do a little hard. I'll have to do it with both you guys. I know. Oh, I got 2 hands. Now.
Look at me.
Hey. We did it. We threw it somewhere. We threw out a lot of love.